Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll be running through some of the key points from Prime Minister's questions where Boris Johnson was exposed for not having done what he promised to do 2 years ago and then having the nerve to sound upset that people were pointing this out. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So quite a few questions yesterday, really. The Prime Minister seemed to be using a couple of stock responses which could be categorised as being in one of two camps. The first is Boris Johnson excusing the fact he hasn't actually done what he promised to do a long time ago by saying, yeah, but we're still going to do it at some point in the future. When? I don't know. We'll do it at some point. And the second is Boris Johnson trying to get out of responsibility by pointing out that he is lazy and can't actually be bothered being Prime Minister. Quite a few questions resulted in one of these two responses, really, when you look at it. Now, let's go through some of them. So we'll kick off with Starmer's questions as usual. And he was initially pressing the Prime Minister on the 800 ferry workers that were sacked by P&O and the fact that the government had advance notice and did nothing about it. Starmer, first of all, basically asked if the Prime Minister can't stop these sackings, what is the point of the government? Then Boris Johnson said, actually, I think you'll find that P&O may actually have broken the law. And he said that these particular laws were passed by Conservative governments. In particular, I think he was referring to the Trade Union Labour Act 1992, which was passed under John Major. He cited Section 194. Now, I can't comment in very much detail because, you know what, I'm not a legal expert. I had a look at it and I thought, oh, is this cobblers? So I'm not a legal expert. I haven't seen a thorough analysis from a legal expert. I will just say that, first of all, I haven't seen anyone point this out so far. And when you look at this section, you look at it and you just think this is talking about alerting ministers. But ministers say they were alerted. You know, and I'm not saying Boris Johnson's talking crap because I don't know enough. But, you know, he does have a bit of a habit. And it also immediately begs the question, why haven't the government done anything then? This happened days ago. Because this episode has been roundly criticised across the political spectrum. Even if the action were not a breach of the law, people would still expect the government to take action to prevent it, which could have included emergency legislation of the sort that Labour proposed again this week, after initially putting it forward last year and not being supported by the Conservatives again. But if the government do think that the laws have been broken already, why are we still not seeing any action? Also, why is the first I'm hearing about it? But anyway, then Starmer pointed out that when Owen Paterson was in trouble last year, Boris Johnson completely rewrote the rules to get him off. He said the government knew about this in advance, the P&O sackings, and did nothing. Then Johnson tried to say, no, I only found out on the day, you know, and he said the government is taking action. He says, well, here's the thing. Government ministers have confirmed, they've said publicly that they knew about this the day before. So as Starmer pointed out, if Johnson is claiming that he did not, then he didn't bother to read his messages. Now, as a little aside, if someone sends a message to the Prime Minister that a company is about to sack 800 British workers in one go, and it's not redundancy, that message is going to be labelled as urgent. That's the sort of thing. You find out about that as an official. You alert not only the Secretary of State, you alert the Prime Minister, urgent. Oh, this is going to be big. So either Boris Johnson is lying about not knowing, because he certainly had a message. So either he's lying about not knowing, or he is arguing that he is too lazy to read even urgent messages from his officials. I'm not going to bother to work out which is more likely, because he is both a serial liar and irreversibly lazy. So either is credible, I suppose. But then a couple of questions later, Starmer pointed out that it's not illegal to pay seafarers below the minimum wage and that Boris Johnson's government said that this was unjustified 2 years ago. They said, right, we'll be straight on it. You know, the usual thing where Boris Johnson gets told a thing and he says, right, yeah, there's no way to defend this. I'll look into it. I'll sort something out. Don't you worry, son. 2 years ago. So Starmer asked, well, when's the government actually going to fix this law then? And Johnson got a bit irritable and said, look, Starmer, you don't seem to be listening to my earlier responses. He said the government will close the loophole and make sure everyone working in the UK economic zone is paid the living wage. The thing is, though, he won't, will he? I mean, there are plenty of cases of where workers aren't paid for hours spent working, even when technically they are supposed to be being paid the minimum wage at least. But the point being made was that Johnson promised to deal with this 2 years ago and he hasn't. Why should we believe that he'll suddenly start doing it now? You know, I mean, simply saying, oh, I'll do it later. It's like the sulky teenager, isn't it? Have you tidied your room yet? I'll do it in a minute. I've been asking you for days. Yes, 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 yes. That's what it's like. You know, because how often is Boris Johnson's response to these questions like that of a child? And not a good one at that. Then Johnson tried to blame the EU. Of course he did. Of course he did. Now, this was he said that P&O were benefiting from like a law produced by the EU, which is a little bit odd for a couple of reasons. First of all, not only would these workers have had more protections in an EU country, including a fairly robust process for carrying out dismissals like this, including consultations with unions and others. But the thing is as well, it's like, here's the thing. Fire and rehire, as it's called, not that this is fire and rehire, this is just fire and piss off out of our company. But fire and rehire in general is not illegal throughout the EU. There are more protections for workers in this particular case in the EU than outside of it, but it's not illegal throughout the EU. But here's the thing, it is in some EU countries. Ireland, for example, had a similar issue. I think it was about 20 years ago. And the reason I know about this, I didn't know about it. The reason I know about this is because some Brexit supporter tried to say, yeah, Ireland had this problem. And you look into it and you go, oh yeah, it was about 20 years ago. And do you know what they did about it? They changed the law. Same in Spain. I think it might be the same in France, but it's certainly the same in Spain. And so in Ireland and Spain, fire and rehire is unlawful. Well, they're in the EU. And they've been in the EU for some time. So actually being in the EU didn't stop that at all. So they're not benefiting from EU rules here. They're benefiting from the fact that we're not in the EU and we have a government that don't care about labour rights. But you know, it's not like Johnson ever bothers to let the truth get in the way of his Brexit rants. He also said that the government will ensure that workers have the best protection of all, a job. Well, that's nice. So the government is guaranteeing that everyone will be able to have a job. Will that be down the mines or in the sweatshops for their slave wages then? Starmer then called Johnson's efforts half-arsed and then left it at that. A Conservative MP accidentally exposed another Boris Johnson lie about smoking, which I won't bother to go into, but then it was Ian Blackford. So he carried on, I think, from last week, his theme about humanitarian aid for Ukrainians. He mentioned orphans. You know, I'll be discussing a related issue in my second video today as it happens. But Blackford talked about 50 orphans from Ukraine that were due to be settled in Scotland. He says an aircraft was due to pick them up, bring them to Scotland. And he thanked the government for their help in that one. But then his question concerned children already in Britain. He said that the Scottish government had increased benefit payments for children against the backdrop of the rise in the cost of living. Would Johnson's government match it? In actual fact, colour me surprised. I was expecting the standard response to be in a situation like this where the Chancellor is about to give a statement. You're the Prime Minister. You don't want to answer awkward questions about funding. You just go, do you know what? There's a statement about funding very soon. Why don't you just listen to that? But he didn't say that because that's the lazy answer. The lazy answer would say, well, the Chancellor's given a statement very shortly. Maybe you should just wait. Always an easy dodge. Always an easy dodge. But instead, whilst not committing to doing the same himself, he came out with the usual line about doing all he can. I'd like to do more, of course. There's only so much we can do. Well, see my previous video to this on how easily they could have done much, much more. Then Blackford mentioned the new inflation figure, getting a bit high, and he asked if the government would scrap the national insurance rise. Then normality was returned, as Johnson did tell him to wait for Sunak's statement on that one. Now, little preview. I do not know whether I will be doing a separate video on anything arising from the budget. It's quite likely I am, but I don't know just yet. So I will just do a little preview on this point, as it was mentioned in PMQs as well. Sunak announced a complete fiddle. He said that he would be cutting national insurance by £6 billion. Then he talked about an income tax cut in 2024. Coincidentally, also the year of the next election, isn't it? You're cutting taxes in 2024. That's when we're having the next election. You're not planning on putting them straight up after you win the election, are you? No, of course not. Of course not. No. even though you've done that after every election. You've dropped taxes just before the election, promised that you wouldn't put them back up, and then a year or two later you just put them back up. You're not going to do it next time, are you, though? No, of course not. But here's the thing. So you think to yourself, okay, a £6 billion cut to national insurance. Well, national insurance is quite topical at the moment. You know, people have been calling for Rishi Sunak to cancel the national insurance hike. Has he done that? No. No. National insurance is going up by £12 billion still. So this cut of £6 billion later is put it up by 12 billion, is going to bring it down by 6 billion. It's literally stealing 10 quid from someone and then giving them back a fiver and then expecting a round of applause for your generosity. It's also worth pointing out a few responses to some backbench questions. He was asked about the fact the government's Northern Rail plan was missing out Bradford, which the MP didn't mention, but it is one of the largest cities in the whole country. Johnson said that the government was looking at how it can get high-speed rail to Bradford. But this isn't the case. It's Leeds he's thinking of. So either, and not for the first time, he has muddled up Bradford and Leeds, or he's lying again. Again, either could be true. I can't be asked working out which is which. And then finally, I couldn't pass over Natalie Elphick's contribution. Now, I'd mentioned her recently. She is the Tory MP for Dover. She tried recently attending a rally in support of the sacked ferry workers, which is all fine, all good. You know, it's good that the MP does that. But the thing is, the crowd pointed out that she voted against Labour's proposal last year to have outlawed the practice. In fact, since then, she's also failed to support it again because Labour decided to push for a vote again this week in Parliament, and she failed to support it a second time. So now her question was not about what could be done to help the sacked workers, but what the government could do to help her local community from the problems created by the lack of ferry services due to P&O's moves, a lot of problems on the roads and so on. And this is a serious issue as well, and it is certainly the sort of thing the MP for Dover should be raising. But obviously it'll do nothing to help her if this becomes an election issue in the area come 2024, because she's showing no concern for those ferry workers, and the fact that our roads are bunged up around Dover is also really part of what she pushed for with Brexit. And it cannot be pointed out enough. If the Tories had taken preemptive action against this, not only would those ferry workers still have got their jobs, but the extra disruption on the roads around Dover would have been limited to that caused by their Brexit policies only. As if that weren't bad enough. But anyway, there we are. Those are my thoughts on PMQs, where yet again, Boris Johnson was constantly trying to defend his government from a litany of failures. I think this needs emphasising, really. Whereas some governments can defend a record of success, even if they can be still facing criticism for failure. So the normal thing is, opposition obviously is going to point out the government's failures. That's politics. And what the government would like to do is to turn it to their successors. But with Boris Johnson, it's entirely about the failures. There's no success to defend. It's always a case of, well, you know, I can't do this. I'd like to, but I can't. Or I'm going to do this. But it's never about what he has done, except when he just makes up achievements that aren't actually real. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.